Beneath the restless surface of the ocean, in the silence of its deepest currents, lies a story older than history itself. It is a tale whispered by waves and remembered in fragments of myth, the memory of a world that once flourished with brilliance beyond imagination. Atlantis, its name alone, awakens curiosity, a city said to have been more than stone and gold, more than palaces and harbors. It was spoken of as a cradle of hidden knowledge, a place where science and spirit were bound together in ways modern minds can scarcely comprehend. When philosophers of the ancient world described Atlantis, they hinted at a civilization that lived in harmony with forces of the cosmos. They did not merely speak of wealth or empire, but of wisdom kept sacred in temples, guarded by those who carried the responsibility of preserving truths too powerful for common use. Atlantis, in this light, becomes not just a sunken continent, but a sanctuary of profound secrets, entrusted to priestly orders who stood between humanity and the mysteries of the universe. Legends tell that these priests were not rulers or kings, but guardians of a flame that symbolized eternal knowledge. This flame, whether physical or metaphorical, represented mastery of the stars, the healing arts, and the hidden vibrations that moved through all creation. In their hands, knowledge was not exploited for conquest, but treated as a sacred covenant, binding them to the laws of balance and harmony. Across the world, traces of their influence seem to appear like echoes of a forgotten voice. Stories of wise lawgivers, teachers who came from the sea, and builders of monuments that align perfectly with the heavens. These fragments suggest that what Atlantis guarded was never entirely lost. It lingers in myth, in architecture, in ritual, like a puzzle scattered across continents waiting to be pieced together. To walk the path of Atlantis is to step into a landscape where myth and memory blur. It is to hear whispers that call from beneath the ocean's depths, urging us to remember a time when knowledge was sacred, when science and spirituality were one, when humanity lived not in defiance of the cosmos but in dialogue with it. This is the story we will explore, not merely of a lost city, but of the guardians who kept its flame alive. If tales of forgotten worlds and hidden knowledge awaken your curiosity, support this journey. Subscribe to the channel to follow more explorations. Like the film if you enjoy stepping into these mysteries, and leave a comment with your reflections. Share it with those who also feel drawn to the secrets of the past, so together we can keep the flame of Atlantis alive. Across the old myths of the world, figures emerge who seem to carry a similar aura, as if drawn from the same hidden source. They appear in stories not as conquerors, but as teachers, offering laws, sacred fire, or the rhythms of the seasons. These were the wise ones, draped not in the robes of power, but in the garments of knowledge. In every culture touched by the echoes of Atlantis, these figures stand in the half-light between gods and mortals, neither fully divine nor entirely human. From the banks of the Nile to the mountains of the Andes, from the islands of Greece to the distant temples of India, legends speak of strangers who arrived with wisdom already complete, carrying knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and medicine. They were often described as tall, radiant, or possessing eyes that shone with a strange light, as though marked by some memory of a higher world. Always they refused to rule as kings, preferring instead the role of mediator, guide, or keeper of sacred law. Whispers from Mesoamerican chronicles tell of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who brought the knowledge of calendars and architecture. In Sumerian tablets, Enki appears as the bringer of hidden arts and crafts, teaching humanity the mysteries of civilization. In Greek traditions, Prometheus defies the heavens to gift fire, not as a mere flame, but as a symbol of higher power. Though separated by oceans and centuries, These archetypes align in uncanny ways, suggesting they may not be isolated inventions of culture, but remnants of an older story woven into the fabric of human memory. Stories such as these often hide their truest meaning in allegory. Fire becomes a metaphor for energy, law becomes a metaphor for order, and the gods themselves may simply mask teachers from a forgotten age. If these shadowy figures were indeed priests of Atlantis, then their appearances across the myths of the world were not accidents, but fragments of a great diaspora, a scattered chorus of voices echoing one ancient order that had sworn to preserve knowledge even in exile. Civilization does not rise by accident. It requires patterns of thought, measurement of time, understanding of cycles, and laws that bind communities. Wherever the figure of the mysterious teacher appears, one finds the sudden leap from chaos to order, from primitive struggle to structured society. These leaps are often unaccounted for by history, explained away as coincidence or natural progress. Yet beneath such explanations lies the possibility of a guiding hand, invisible yet deliberate, sculpting humanity's path. What makes these priestly figures so striking is their refusal to claim the spotlight of kingship. They seem to stand behind the throne, whispering guidance, setting boundaries, and maintaining the balance between human ambition and cosmic law. In myth after myth, they retreat into shadows once their task is done, vanishing into mountains, seas, or the heavens, leaving only memory behind. Such disappearances may not have been vanishing acts at all, but simply the priests withdrawing, guarding what knowledge must remain hidden until the right moment. Their presence in stories gives the impression of architects who prefer not to be named, builders who shaped the foundation of human culture, yet allowed others to take credit for the construction. The silent architects of myth may have been far more real than we assume, their legacy buried not only in stone but in the very systems of thought that govern civilizations. To think of them this way is to imagine history not as a random unfolding, but as a guided script written by hands that reached beyond their time. The priests of Atlantis, if they truly walked this path, may have been those hands, shaping a world that was never meant to forget them, even if their names dissolved into legend. Legends speak of sanctuaries where light never dimmed, where a flame burned unceasingly, tended by hands that never faltered. To the uninitiated, such a flame might seem only a ritual fire, an act of devotion or worship. Yet hidden beneath this image is a deeper secret. The eternal flame was not merely a symbol of light, but of knowledge, a living fire representing the mastery of energies that bound the cosmos together. Imagine walking through the vast halls of an Atlantean sanctuary where walls were carved not only with symbols of devotion, but with precise alignments to the stars. Great pillars reflected the movement of the heavens, and chambers resonated with tones so perfect that a single voice could set the stone trembling. At the heart of these sanctuaries, guarded by the most trusted of priests, burned the eternal flame. Its glow was said to carry warmth not of firewood, but of a more subtle force, one that nourished the spirit as much as the body. Accounts from distant cultures suggest that such flames did exist beyond mere imagination. Ancient Zoroastrian temples maintained sacred fires said to never go out. In Greece, the Vestal Virgins guarded a flame within the heart of Rome, a tradition claimed to descend from far older roots. In Mesoamerica, ceremonies honored the fire of renewal, marking the rebirth of cycles. All of these echoes hint at an origin deeper than their cultures, as if each was a faint reflection of an Atlantean light. Priests who tended this flame were not simply caretakers of ritual, but keepers of a science disguised as devotion. They understood that fire was more than a tool, that it symbolized energy in all its forms. To them, the eternal flame represented the laws of the universe, the cycles of creation and destruction, the secret currents that flowed through the cosmos. Guarding it, was not an act of religion alone, but an act of science, a defense of wisdom that could heal or destroy depending on its use. Some traditions speak of chambers where this flame illuminated crystalline altars, refracting light into patterns that mapped the heavens or focused energy into healing vibrations. To the eyes of ordinary men, it was sacred magic. To the priests, it was the science of resonance, of geometry, of the subtle forces hidden within matter itself. Visitors who were allowed into the outer courts of these temples would see only the glow of ritual, perhaps hearing chants that seemed otherworldly. Few ever stepped beyond into the inner sanctum where the true work was done. That secrecy was not born from arrogance, but from necessity, for such knowledge was dangerous in unworthy hands. The eternal flame was both a gift and a burden, capable of uplifting civilizations or plunging them into ruin. Stories tell of initiates who spent years in preparation before being allowed near the flame. They fasted, purified their minds, and underwent trials meant to strip them of pride and ambition. Only those who could approach with balance were deemed worthy to glimpse the mysteries that flickered in the heart of that fire. To pass these trials was to step into a different world, where matter and spirit were no longer divided but bound by one truth. Even now, the idea of a flame that never dies continues to resonate. It survives in eternal lamps lit in temples, in torches carried during sacred ceremonies, in the idea that knowledge itself is a light no darkness can overcome. Perhaps these echoes are not mere symbols, but faint survivals of an ancient science, a science once guarded in temples of stone where the priests of Atlantis preserved the flame of eternity. Long before mechanical clocks ticked or calendars divided days into months, there were watchers of the sky. Priests of forgotten ages raised their eyes to the stars, charting their movements with a precision that still astonishes. To them, the heavens were not distant, but a living script written by the cosmos, a text that revealed the rhythm of time itself. In Atlantis, these watchers were said to form the core of the priesthood, guardians of the celestial calendar. Their task was not merely to track seasons for planting or harvest, but to align human life with cosmic law. The priests believed that stars and planets carried influences that shaped the destiny of civilizations. To understand these rhythms was to walk in harmony with the universe. To ignore them was to risk catastrophe. Every eclipse, every solstice, every rare alignment of planets carried meaning, and it was the duty of the priesthood to interpret these signs. On the walls of Atlantean sanctuaries, patterns of constellations may have been carved, marking not only the stars of their own age, but those that had shifted through millennia. Their calendar was not confined to a single year, but spanned vast cycles, measuring epochs in which entire civilizations rose and fell. Such knowledge could only have come from centuries of observation, recorded and guarded by generations of priests who saw themselves as keepers of humanity's place in the cosmos. Echoes of this science can be found across the world. The Mayan calendar, intricate beyond comprehension, calculated cosmic cycles that spanned thousands of years. Egyptian priests of Ra aligned temples so precisely with solstices that shafts of light would pierce hidden chambers on a single day of the year. In the misty groves of the Druids, stones were arranged to mark equinoxes and eclipses with uncanny accuracy. These cultures, separated by oceans, carried the same torch, as though inheriting fragments of a single lost system. Understanding the heavens was not only about measuring time, but about foreseeing disaster. Ancient texts speak of floods, fires, and upheavals predicted by those who read the stars. To the priests of Atlantis, the sky was a warning as well as a guide, a great clock whose hands pointed not only to harvests, but to cataclysms. Perhaps it was through this science that some foresaw the very fall of their own homeland, reading in the heavens the shadow of destruction long before it came. Priests who mastered the celestial calendar were often feared as much as they were revered. Kings sought their guidance, yet trembled at their warnings. Common people saw them as prophets capable of communing with gods. Yet their power came not from divine favor alone, but from disciplined observation and knowledge handed down like sacred treasure. Every recorded star, every marked cycle, was another stone in a bridge between humanity and the cosmos. In temples dedicated to this knowledge, students would spend decades memorizing star charts, learning to measure the slow drift of constellations, studying the dance of Venus and the rising of Sirius. These were not idle pursuits. They were preparations for leadership, for those who understood the calendar could guide not only the fields but the fate of nations. To govern without the stars was to walk blind into the future. When modern science rediscovers these alignments, it often marvels at the precision but overlooks the devotion behind it. For the priests of Atlantis, astronomy was not a cold science, but a sacred duty, a way of listening to the heartbeat of the universe. To them the stars were not distant suns, but eternal teachers, each carrying a lesson for those who could understand their language. The legacy of these keepers survives still, in monuments that refuse to forget the sky. Stonehenge, Chichen Itza, the pyramids of Giza, all stand as silent testimonies that once, long ago, humanity walked in rhythm with the stars, guided by priests who saw in the heavens the reflection of eternity. Ancient traditions across the globe whispered of a language that was not spoken with words, but sung through the very fabric of creation. To the priests of Atlantis, sound was not simply noise, but a living force that could mold reality itself. They believed every stone, every body of water, every human soul vibrated at a frequency, and through mastery of resonance, one could harmonize with the hidden patterns of the universe. Accounts suggest that Atlantean temples were designed not only as places of worship, but as resonant chambers where chants and tones magnified into forces capable of shaping matter. Initiates were taught to vocalize in ways that caused walls of stone to hum as though alive, each vibration unlocking secrets invisible to the untrained ear. Music was not entertainment, but science. Sound was not art, but technology. Legends of lost civilizations hint at the extraordinary possibilities of such mastery. Stones weighing tons may have been lifted with nothing more than harmonic resonance, their mass countered by frequencies that loosened the grip of gravity. Tales from Tibet and Egypt speak of priests chanting in unison while stones shifted into place, as if carried by invisible hands. What seems mythic to us may have been routine to those who understood the laws of sound. Healing, too, was bound to this sacred language. Every organ of the body was believed to sing its own tone, and illness was thought to arise when these tones fell out of harmony. By chanting, by using sacred instruments, by weaving sound into ritual, the priests could restore balance. Modern echoes of this belief linger in sound therapy, in chants that calm the mind, in instruments said to realign the body's energy. Such practices may be but faded remnants of a once flourishing science. The language of vibrations extended beyond healing into communication itself. Myths tell of words spoken not for the ear, but for the soul, tones that bypassed language and carried meaning directly into consciousness. It is said that initiates who advanced far enough could exchange thoughts across distances, linked not by words, but by harmonics tuned to their minds. Sound became a bridge, connecting priest to priest, temple to temple, across the far reaches of their land. Imagine a hall where voices rose not in chaotic song, but in structured resonance, every syllable calculated, every chant aligned to a greater geometry. In such a hall, even silence carried weight, for silence itself was considered a tone, the resonance of stillness, the interval that gave meaning to sound. Through these practices, the priests did not simply worship creation, they tuned themselves into it, becoming instruments of the cosmos itself. Legends of sacred words, mantras, and divine names may all trace their roots to this lost science. Every culture holds fragments of chants said to open doors to higher realities, words too powerful to be spoken casually. Egyptian priests invoked names that shook the pillars of temples, while Vedic hymns were said to sustain the order of the universe itself. Such traditions may be memories of an Atlantean priesthood who first discovered that sound was not bound to the human tongue, but was the heartbeat of reality. Even now, modern science glimpses what the ancients may have known. Vibrations shape patterns in sand and water. Frequencies alter brain states. Sound waves can heal or harm. These discoveries feel new, yet they are old truths reborn. They suggest that what the priests of Atlantis guarded was no mere superstition, but a knowledge both profound and dangerous. For to master sound is to hold the key to creation itself. Among the most enigmatic legacies attributed to Atlantis is the legend of their crystals. Not mere gemstones, these crystalline forms were said to store energy, radiate light, and serve as conduits between worlds. To the priests, crystals were not ornaments or symbols of wealth, but sacred tools, fragments of the Earth's hidden architecture. Each crystal held within it patterns of vibration capable of amplifying thought, healing bodies, or powering entire sanctuaries. Imagine towering spires of crystal rising from Atlantean temples, their facets catching the sun by day and glowing with inner light by night. These were not decorations, but technologies, harmonizing with the eternal flame and the chants of the priesthood. They pulsed with life, storing energy drawn from the stars, from the earth itself, perhaps even from dimensions beyond human sight. Priests who knew their secrets could unlock memories stored within them, as though each crystal were a library written not in ink but in vibration. Stories handed down through mystery schools speak of crystal spheres used for seeing visions, of crystalline grids beneath temples that enhanced the energy of rituals, of crystals worn by initiates to protect them against corruption of the mind. To ordinary eyes they appeared as glittering stones, but in priestly hands they were instruments of profound precision. They recorded, amplified, and transmitted forces that science has only begun to rediscover. Legends claim that the greatest of these crystals were not natural at all, but grown through secret alchemical processes known only to the high priests. These engineered crystals could resonate with frequencies beyond human perception, opening pathways to communication with higher realms. Some were said to act as gateways, anchoring the presence of gods or guiding visions into the mysteries of creation. Such objects would have been guarded fiercely, hidden from the unworthy, for their misuse could unravel the balance of nature itself. Echoes of this belief ripple through the myths of other lands. The breastplate of the Hebrew high priest contained 12 sacred stones said to channel divine messages. Ancient Chinese texts speak of jade as a bridge between heaven and earth. Indigenous traditions of the Americas tell of stones that sang, that healed, that remembered. Each of these fragments points back to a deeper origin, as if they were splinters of a shattered Atlantean legacy. Priests of Atlantis may have also used crystals as a means of preserving their wisdom. Knowledge carved into fragile scrolls could burn or decay, but knowledge stored in vibration within crystal lattices might survive the flood of ages. Initiates trained to attune themselves could retrieve these memories, drawing entire histories or sciences from the silent heart of a stone. Perhaps some of these relics still slumber, waiting for a listener who remembers how to hear their song. Visions of crystal towers harnessing energy have inspired modern seekers who see in them a forgotten technology, one that anticipated solar panels or resonant energy fields. While such images belong to legend, they remind us that ancient wisdom may not have been as primitive as it appears. The crystals of Atlantis may have been both spiritual and technological, merging the two into a unity modern thought has yet to reconcile. Even now, crystals remain objects of fascination, worn as talismans, studied for their ability to conduct electricity, used in devices that power communication. These applications may be but the faintest shadows of what the priests once achieved. If the stories hold any truth, the Atlantean crystal was more than a tool. It was a bridge between worlds, a vessel of memory, a silent guardian of a knowledge too vast for parchment or stone. Priests of Atlantis were remembered not only as guardians of science, but as mediators between the human and the divine. They walked a path that straddled two realms, acting as bridges through which higher intelligences could speak to humanity. To stand in their presence was said to be like standing in the presence of something not wholly of this world, for their rites and visions placed them in contact with beings beyond mortal understanding. Rituals of initiation often demanded that candidates surrender their old identity, dying symbolically before being reborn into a higher order. In deep sanctuaries carved of stone and crystal, initiates drank elixirs, inhaled sacred fumes, or lay in darkness until visions overtook them. The priests taught that such visions were not hallucinations but journeys, travels into realms where gods, ancestors, and cosmic beings dwelled. To return from such journeys was to carry messages that shaped the fate of the living. Accounts from distant lands reflect these practices. Egyptian inscriptions describe journeys of the soul guided by Thoth, keeper of divine wisdom. Greek mysteries spoke of initiates descending into the underworld only to rise with new sight. In the deserts of the Near East, prophets fell into trances where voices spoke with authority not their own. Each of these traditions may be a reflection of Atlantean rites, filtered through time and culture. Priests who returned from these journeys often spoke in symbols and allegories, for direct language could not contain what they had seen. They spoke of light too radiant to describe, of voices that sang without words, of beings who offered both warning and guidance. These visions gave rise to myths of gods walking among men, yet perhaps what was witnessed were not deities in the common sense, but intelligences that existed beyond physical form. Communion with such beings was not without danger. Some initiates never returned, their minds shattered by the immensity of what they encountered. Others returned, changed, marked by an aura that set them apart from ordinary people. To balance such power required discipline, humility, and constant vigilance, for pride could twist visions into madness, and ambition could turn divine communion into dark sorcery. Through their role as intermediaries, the priests became arbiters of destiny. Kings sought their counsel, armies paused at their words, and entire nations awaited the outcome of their visions. Yet the priests themselves claimed no authority of their own, insisting they were only vessels, channels through which higher wisdom flowed. Their power lay not in command, but in listening, in receiving what others could not. Initiation rites served to remind every priest that they were guardians, not owners, of the knowledge entrusted to them. They were taught that the wisdom of the gods was not to be wielded lightly, but to be preserved for the sake of balance between worlds. To misuse such communion was to invite disaster, for the beings they contacted were not to be commanded, only honored. Even now, stories of shamans, prophets, and mystics echo this ancient path. Across continents and centuries, humans continue to seek contact with something beyond, something greater, something that whispers truths in the silence of trance. These echoes suggest that the role of the Atlantean priest was never extinguished, only transformed, as humanity continues to reach for the voices between gods and mortals. Whispers of Atlantean knowledge often speak of brilliance, yet hidden within those whispers lies a darker note. Not all wisdom was meant for the hands of mortals, and the priests knew it well. Among their guarded sciences existed teachings so dangerous they were rarely spoken of openly, secrets that could twist the harmony of nature and tear apart the delicate balance of creation. These were the forbidden arts, the sciences of the deep. Stories tell of experiments where energies drawn from the Earth's core were manipulated in vast chambers beneath temples, harnessed through crystals and resonant machines. What began as a pursuit of healing and enlightenment risked becoming a path toward control over the very fabric of matter. To manipulate forces without restraint was to invite destruction, and the priests themselves were divided over how far such pursuits should go. Legends hint at attempts to command the weather, to redirect storms, to bend the tides to human will. Some say vast mirrors or crystalline arrays focused solar energy with devastating precision, capable of leveling armies or scorching lands. These were not inventions of imagination, but dangerous byproducts of a science so advanced it blurred into magic. Priests sworn to protect the balance looked upon such works with dread, fearing that ambition would awaken forces too great to contain. Temples once dedicated to harmony may have become arenas of conflict, where those faithful to the cosmic order stood against others who hungered for power. Some believed humanity was ready to wield such tools, to rise as masters of creation itself. Others warned that meddling with these hidden laws would shatter the very foundation of Atlantis. It was a conflict not only of science but of morality, tearing at the unity of the priesthood. Stories carried across the centuries speak of great catastrophes linked to forbidden experiments, a surge of energy that split the ground, storms summoned that spun beyond control, or vibrations that tore apart the very stones they were meant to empower. To those who witnessed these events, the priests appeared like sorcerers, wielding forces no one could comprehend. Yet within the priestly orders themselves, such events were remembered as tragic warnings, proof of what happens when sacred knowledge is corrupted by pride. What makes these tales compelling is how they echo through later myths. The Greeks spoke of hubris, of mortals reaching too far and being struck down by the gods. Biblical stories warned of towers built to reach heaven, destroyed in a burst of divine fury. In each case, the underlying lesson is the same. Knowledge without humility leads to ruin. Perhaps these stories are distant reflections of a reality witnessed in Atlantis, when forbidden sciences began to unravel the harmony of their world. Priests who remained loyal to their oaths may have hidden away the most dangerous teachings, locking them in symbols, encrypting them in myths, scattering fragments so that no unworthy hand could ever reassemble them. Yet secrecy can only hold so long, and once ambition takes root, it is difficult to extinguish. Atlantis itself may have been undone by this tension, as forbidden knowledge seeped from sanctuaries into the ambitions of rulers and generals. Even now one can hear the echo of that conflict in our own age, the temptation to unlock the deepest laws of matter, to manipulate energies beyond our comprehension, to wield the forces of creation without restraint. The forbidden science of Atlantis serves as both a mystery and a warning, a reminder that not all doors are meant to be opened, and not all knowledge brings light. Legends speak with chilling clarity of a night when the earth shook and the waters swallowed the land. What had stood as the jewel of civilizations crumbled into ruin, and the priests who had guarded their sacred sciences found themselves standing before the end of their world. The fall of Atlantis was not a quiet fading, but a cataclysm, an event so vast that its memory burned itself into myths across continents. Accounts describe fire bursting from mountains, the ground splitting beneath temples, and storms that blotted out the sky. Seas surged in waves taller than walls, swallowing palaces and fields alike. People fled toward sanctuaries, toward the eternal flames that had once been symbols of balance, hoping that the priests might hold back the disaster. Yet even the most devoted among them knew that this was no storm to be calmed, but the collapse of an entire age. Priests who had long studied the stars may have seen the warning signs, alignments of planets, tremors beneath the earth, strange disturbances in the cycles they had charted for centuries. Some prepared quietly, gathering scrolls, crystals, and sacred objects. Others entered deep meditation, seeking guidance from higher realms, desperate to preserve what wisdom they could before the waters claimed everything. For them, the cataclysm was not merely the end of a city, but the unraveling of a covenant with the cosmos. Stories passed down through generations tell of frantic efforts to save fragments of knowledge. Initiates carried tablets of stone to hidden caverns. Others inscribed sacred geometry into monuments far from the doomed continent. Crystal archives were sealed deep beneath the ocean, glowing still in silence. These efforts were acts of defiance against oblivion, attempts to ensure that even if the city died, the flame of knowledge would not be extinguished entirely. Among the people, terror spread as the seas rose higher, drowning temples that had stood for ages. Yet within the sanctuaries the priests did not abandon their post. Many are said to have remained by the eternal flame, chanting until the last, offering themselves as guardians who would sync with their knowledge rather than see it corrupted. Their sacrifice became part of the myth, painting them as figures of tragic devotion who stood between humanity and the abyss. In faraway lands, stories emerged of strangers who arrived after the flood, carrying with them fragments of a drowned science. Survivors who had fled the rising seas spoke of their homeland with grief, describing golden cities now lost beneath the waves. To the people who welcomed them, they seemed like messengers from another world, bringing laws, astronomy, healing, and wisdom. Such legends breathe life into the belief that some priests escaped, carrying the seed of their civilization across oceans. The cataclysm of Atlantis did not erase its memory, but carved it deeper into human consciousness. Every myth of a flood, every story of a lost golden age, every warning of civilizations that rise only to fall may hold within it a faint echo of that day. The priests knew the sea had not merely swallowed land, it had swallowed an entire covenant with knowledge, forcing humanity to begin again in shadows. Even today, the image of a land swallowed by the ocean stirs something primal. Perhaps because it speaks not only of the fragility of civilizations, but of the resilience of memory. Though the waves claimed Atlantis, whispers of its priesthood survived, carried like flotsam across the tides of time, waiting to be rediscovered. Among the most intriguing legacies attributed to ancient priesthoods are maps that should not exist, charts of coastlines drawn long before sailors could have reached them, depictions of lands that only modern instruments revealed. These hidden maps suggest that knowledge of the world was once far greater than history admits, preserved in secrecy and passed down through priestly orders. The Piri Reis map, drawn in the 16th century, astonishes scholars with its detail, showing the coast of South America with uncanny precision and even what appears to be the outline of Antarctica centuries before its discovery. Its maker admitted he had compiled it from far older sources, fragments of maps handed down through time. To trace those sources back is to walk into shadows where whispers of Atlantean cartographers wait. Priests of Atlantis were said to have mastered both the heavens and the earth, mapping not only the stars above, but the lands and seas below. They navigated the oceans long before other cultures dared to, guided not by crude tools, but by celestial alignments and knowledge of currents. Their maps may have recorded continents long before rising seas altered coastlines, preserving the shape of a world few believed they knew. Fragments of this hidden cartography may have been carried by survivors into Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. Stories of Phoenician sailors and Greek explorers who stumbled upon distant lands may have drawn from priestly knowledge inherited without acknowledgement. What appeared as chance discovery may instead have been guided by maps older than memory. Some suggest that maps of this kind were not mere records, but part of a greater science of cycles. To the priests, coastlines were not fixed, but shifting with the movements of water and earth. Their charts may have included not only what was, but what would be, predicting floods and upheavals long before they occurred. Such knowledge would have been both priceless and dangerous, entrusted only to those prepared to guard it. The secrecy surrounding such maps may explain why they surface only in fragments copied and recopied, stripped of context yet carrying mysteries that puzzle even today. To reveal too much would have meant giving power to rulers or conquerors who might misuse it. Better to hide it, to let only the initiated read the symbols that concealed oceans within lines and numbers. Legends from Polynesian navigators, Norse seafarers and Arab sailors suggest a memory of lands beyond reach, as if whispers of Atlantean maps echoed across the seas. Each culture claimed discovery, yet behind them all may have stood a priestly science that charted the world long before history began. What makes these maps so compelling is not only their accuracy, but their persistence. They survived floods, conquests, and the burning of libraries, hidden in scrolls and whispered in traditions. Their survival hints at a deliberate effort, as if unseen guardians ensured that humanity would never forget entirely the shape of the world. The hidden maps of Atlantis remain not only as relics of geography, but as testimonies to a priesthood determined to outwit even the ocean that drowned their home. Among the deepest mysteries said to be preserved by the Atlantean priesthood was not a science of matter or of the heavens, but of the human spirit itself. They believed that the soul was not bound to flesh, but an eternal traveler, moving through cycles of birth and death, gathering knowledge with each passage. This was not a matter of faith to them, but of direct experience, cultivated through rites and practices that opened the gates of perception. Initiates were taught to step beyond the limits of their bodies, guided into states where the soul could wander free. Through trance, chant, and the resonance of sacred spaces, they learned to travel through realms unseen by ordinary eyes. Such journeys were not dreamlike illusions, but structured explorations of a reality that lay parallel to the physical world. The priesthood claimed to map these realms as carefully as they mapped the heavens, treating the spirit as part of a greater cosmic order. Visions of this inner science survive in traditions scattered across the globe. Egyptian texts describe the soul's journey after death, passing through gates and trials before reaching renewal. In India, reincarnation became a central truth, with the soul viewed as eternal and ever-learning. In Greece, mysteries spoke of descent into the underworld and return with new life. Each of these teachings echoes the Atlantean belief that life was not an ending, but a passage. Priests also studied the architecture of the soul, teaching that each human carried within them layers of being. The physical body was but the outer garment, beneath which lay subtler forms, vibrating at higher frequencies, capable of surviving death. By learning to harmonize these layers, initiates could attain states of balance that brought healing, insight, and power. Those who mastered such practices were said to walk between worlds even while alive. Ceremonies may have included guided journeys through darkness, where initiates lay within tomb-like chambers, deprived of light and sound until visions unfolded within them. In these altered states, the soul revealed its memories of past lives, its origins beyond the earth, its purpose in the cycle of existence. To emerge from such rites was to be reborn, carrying knowledge that changed not only the initiate, but the destiny of those they guided. Among the priesthood, death was not feared but honored as a transition. Funerary rituals preserved the body not as an end, but as a gateway, ensuring that the soul passed safely into the next realm. The great care given to burials across ancient civilizations may reflect this inheritance, a memory of a priesthood who taught that nothing was more sacred than the journey of the soul. Even in fragments, these teachings shaped the world. Gnostic sects spoke of the soul trapped in matter, seeking release through knowledge. Orphic hymns described purification and rebirth. Mystics in every tradition continued the search for the truth of the spirit, keeping alive an ancient flame that began in temples, now lost beneath the sea. Modern seekers still chase the echoes of this science through meditation, near-death experiences, and altered states of consciousness. Each glimpse suggests the same truth, that the soul is greater than the body, eternal and unbroken, moving through ages as the priests of Atlantis once taught. Their legacy is not only in stones or stars, but in the inner journeys that continue even now. Atlantean priests were said to practice a proto-alchemy, a science not merely of changing metals, but of unlocking the hidden powers of nature. To them, the four elements, earth, water, air, and fire, were not only physical substances, but living principles, forces that bound the cosmos and echoed within every living being. Mastery of these elements was both a spiritual path and a practical art, allowing them to heal, to build, and perhaps even to transform matter itself. In their sanctuaries, the priests studied how the elements combined, how balance produced harmony, and how imbalance created destruction. Earth was the foundation, water the flow, air the breath, fire the spark. Each represented a layer of reality, from the physical to the spiritual, and to command them was to step into the role of creator. Such knowledge was approached with reverence, for it was seen not as manipulation, but as partnership with the forces of the universe. Legends suggest that the priests could transmute materials not only through fire and metal, but through resonance and vibration. What later alchemists in Egypt and Europe sought to rediscover, the philosopher's stone, the transformation of lead into gold, may have been but echoes of techniques once refined in Atlantis. Yet for the priests, the true goal was not wealth, but purification, turning the heavy and base into the luminous and eternal. Alchemy of the elements extended beyond matter into the body and spirit. Water became a symbol of purification, fire of transformation, air of inspiration, earth of grounding. Through rituals, initiates were taught to embody these forces within themselves, to balance their inner nature as carefully as they balanced the outer. A priest who mastered this inner alchemy became a living temple, reflecting the harmony of the cosmos. Stories of their experiments drift through myth. Sacred flames that burned without fuel, vessels that produced pure water, metals that shone with unnatural brilliance, all may be memories of their art. The Greeks spoke of ambrosia, food of the gods, perhaps a creation of elemental fusion. In India, soma was said to grant visions and immortality. These fragments hint at a lost discipline where science and spirit were woven seamlessly together. Later, alchemists carried this tradition forward in secrecy, disguising their work in symbols and riddles. They spoke of dragons, of suns and moons, of hidden marriages of fire and water. Behind these images may lie the faint survival of Atlantean wisdom, encoded to protect against misuse. What appears as metaphor may in fact be the remnants of a precise science once guarded by priests of the deep past. Even the architecture of sacred sites reflects elemental alchemy. Pyramids rose from the earth, channels directed water, chambers resonated with air, flames burned in sanctuaries, each element woven into the structure. To walk within such spaces was to step into a living laboratory of balance, where the initiate was transformed as much by experience as by knowledge. Modern science now explores matter at levels invisible to the eye, splitting atoms, bending elements, unlocking energies hidden within. Yet perhaps what we call discovery is only a rediscovery, a return to principles once known in Atlantis. The alchemy of elements reminds us that true mastery lies not in domination, but in harmony with the living forces that shape all existence. When Atlantis fell and its priesthood scattered, Not all their knowledge could be carried openly. To protect it, fragments were concealed within hidden brotherhoods, societies that wove symbols and allegories into their teachings so that only initiates could grasp their true meaning. Across the ancient world, these secret orders preserved echoes of the drowned priesthood, cloaking their inheritance in mystery. Among the Greeks, the Orphics taught of the soul's immortality, of rebirth, and of purification through ritual. Their hymns spoke of journeys beyond death, mirroring the Atlantean science of the soul. In their gatherings, initiates drank from sacred vessels and recited verses that concealed truths far older than Greece itself. To outsiders, their practices seemed strange, yet to those within, they were glimpses of a wisdom that stretched back to a sunken age. The Essenes of Judea lived apart from the world, dedicating themselves to purity, secrecy, and the study of hidden lore. Their rituals of cleansing, their devotion to cosmic order, and their guarded writings suggest a continuity of priestly traditions. Some scholars see them as guardians of knowledge that would later flow into Gnosticism, carrying forward the Atlantean flame under new names. Mystery cults across the Mediterranean wove myths into allegories of transformation. The rites of Eleusis spoke of descent and rebirth, a journey echoing Atlantean initiations into the science of the soul. Mithraic rituals, hidden in underground chambers, mirrored cosmic battles of light and darkness, recalling the schisms that tore the priesthood of Atlantis. Each cult offered fragments of a larger story, scattered like shards of a broken mirror. Symbols became the language of these brotherhoods. Serpents, suns, labyrinths, and stars appeared in their teachings, carrying meanings hidden from common eyes. Such symbols may have originated in Atlantean temples, encoded to survive across cultures and centuries. To read them properly was to access a knowledge that could not be written plainly, for plain words would invite persecution or misuse. What united these secret orders was not only secrecy but initiation. Knowledge was never given freely. It had to be earned through trial, through transformation of the self. Only those who proved themselves worthy could advance, mirroring the discipline of the Atlantean priesthood. Through this structure, the brotherhoods ensured that wisdom survived not in books but in living traditions, carried by the few. Even when empires rose and fell, these societies endured in hidden places, adapting their symbols, blending with local faiths, yet never losing the core of their inheritance. They became the quiet threads connecting civilizations, weaving Atlantean memory into the fabric of history without ever declaring their origin. Modern secret societies may trace their roots to these ancient brotherhoods, their symbols echoing designs carved in stone long before history began. Though their true connection to Atlantis can never be proven, the persistence of their traditions suggests that the flame of the priesthood has never been extinguished, only hidden, waiting for those with eyes to see. Within the Atlantean priesthood, harmony was not absolute. Knowledge that could heal and uplift also held the potential to corrupt, and not all who carried the flame of wisdom did so with purity of heart. Over time, divisions formed, subtle at first, then growing into open conflict. Some priests remained faithful to the sacred laws of balance, guarding knowledge with humility, while others succumbed to the intoxication of power, seeking to wield hidden sciences for dominion. Accounts passed through myth describe a rift that cut through the very soul of Atlantis. One faction, often remembered as Children of the Light, strove to preserve the sanctity of the eternal flame. They believed that knowledge was not to be owned, but shared in service of harmony between humanity and the cosmos. The other faction, the Shadowed Priests, believed that with such wisdom they could reshape the world to their will, bending nature and even time itself to human ambition. This struggle was not fought with weapons alone, but with ideology, with rivalries played out in temples and in the corridors of power. Rituals once performed in unity became distorted by ambition, chants altered to summon forces that once had been approached with reverence. Those who sought dominion over nature twisted sacred rites into tools of control, forgetting that every misuse of the hidden laws carried consequences. Legends of ancient battles between gods may reflect this inner war, tales of divine beings clashing in the heavens, of thunderbolts and storms unleashed upon the earth, may be allegories of priests wielding energies that tore through their cities. What later cultures remembered as war between celestial powers may in truth have been the civil war of Atlantis, a battle between those who preserved harmony and those who pursued dominance. The memory of this division survived in myths of duality. Light and darkness, order and chaos, good and evil, all echoes of a deeper schism that began within a lost priesthood. Humanity inherited not only their wisdom but their conflict, carrying within it the eternal struggle between those who seek power and those who seek balance. Whispers suggest that this war hastened the downfall of Atlantis. Forbidden experiments were no longer contained but unleashed in competition between factions. Machines once built for healing became engines of destruction. The very forces that could have protected their world may have been turned against it, tearing at the foundation of their land until the seas themselves rose to claim it. Priests who remained loyal to the light may have tried desperately to warn of the consequences, but their voices were drowned out by those who promised power and prosperity. In this way, the fall of Atlantis was not simply a natural catastrophe, but the result of human choice, an ancient lesson of what happens when knowledge is divorced from wisdom. Even now, the war of light and shadow endures within humanity. Every age faces the same question, whether to wield knowledge in service of balance or in pursuit of power. The schism of Atlantis did not vanish with its temples, but continues in every conflict where wisdom and ambition collide. When the ocean swallowed Atlantis, it did not erase every trace. Whispers suggest that beneath the waves still lie the ruins of great sanctuaries, temples where priests once tended eternal flames, chambers where crystal towers hummed with resonance, halls where knowledge of the stars was carved into stone. Submerged beneath centuries of silence, these ruins remain hidden, waiting like guardians beneath the sea. Legends of drowned temples have surfaced in cultures far removed from one another. Fishermen tell of lights flickering beneath the waves, sailors of stone structures glimpsed through clear waters. Across the world, myths speak of sunken cities whose bells toll faintly from beneath the sea. These fragments may all be distant memories of Atlantean sanctuaries now buried in the deep. Modern discoveries lend weight to such tales. Off the coast of Japan lies Yonaguni, a massive structure shaped like terraces and steps, its geometry suggesting deliberate design. In the Bahamas, the Bimini Road stretches across the seabed like the remains of an ancient causeway. In India's Gulf of Kambat, submerged ruins lie scattered across the ocean floor, older than any known civilization. Each of these discoveries stirs the possibility that what was lost has not vanished entirely, but sleeps beneath the waves. Priestly centers may have been built upon sites of immense natural energy, aligned with ley lines and ocean currents. If so, their ruins may still hum faintly with forces unknown, crystalline remnants pulsing softly in the dark waters. Divers who explore such places speak of strange sensations, of disorientation, of feeling watched, as if the temples themselves retain memory of their sacred role. Ancient traditions warn that some knowledge was deliberately buried with the sea, hidden until humanity could approach it with the humility required. Submerged temples may not only be ruins, but vaults designed to protect treasures of wisdom from unworthy hands. To uncover them prematurely might unleash powers not meant for the present age. Legends even suggest that some priests chose to remain, sealing themselves within their sanctuaries as the waters rose, chanting until the sea covered their voices. Their presence may linger as guardians of those ruins, bound not by flesh but by spirit, watching silently until the world is ready to receive their secrets again. The ocean has always been a place of mystery, vast and unfathomed, holding more secrets than the stars above. Perhaps it guards Atlantis still, keeping safe what would otherwise be destroyed by the hands of men. Temples beneath the sea may remain not only as relics of a lost civilization, but as living sanctuaries sealed by the ocean itself until the appointed time. Every dive, every discovery of stone where no stone should be, keeps the mystery alive. The sea has not given up all its secrets, and perhaps it never will. Yet the possibility that beneath its surface lie the remnants of a forgotten priesthood is enough to remind us that Atlantis is not wholly gone, but waits, silent and patient, beneath the waves. Though Atlantis was swallowed by the sea, fragments of its science may be stirring once more. Across the world, discoveries in physics, medicine, and energy seem to echo the wisdom once guarded in temples of stone and crystal. It is as if humanity, without knowing it, is retracing the forgotten steps of a lost civilization, uncovering truths long buried beneath myth. Resonance has returned as a frontier of exploration. Scientists study how frequencies can heal, how vibrations shape matter, how sound waves can move and even dissolve objects. These revelations mirror the ancient belief in the sacred language of vibrations, once wielded by priests to move stones and heal the sick. What is heralded as new may instead be the reawakening of an old science. Crystals, once dismissed as mere decoration, are now at the heart of modern technology, powering communication, storing memory, and transmitting energy. The same properties that drive computers and satellites may have been harnessed in Atlantean sanctuaries for purposes we are only beginning to imagine. Each innovation brings us closer to what the priesthood once guarded in silence. In medicine, the exploration of energy fields around the body recalls ancient practices of harmonizing the soul's layers. Techniques of sound therapy, light healing, and altered states of consciousness resemble Atlantean methods of balancing vibrations. What modern seekers call alternative healing may be the rediscovery of a science that was once central to priestly training. Even in the vast field of physics, whispers of Atlantis return. Quantum entanglement, resonance fields, and the manipulation of invisible forces sound strikingly like the forbidden sciences once guarded and feared. Knowledge once dismissed as fantasy is becoming reality, suggesting that the line between myth and science may not be as wide as we think. Dreams and visions of seekers also play a role. Across the world, people describe glimpses of golden temples, chants in forgotten tongues, or memories of standing before eternal flames. Whether these are echoes of past lives, archetypes buried in the collective mind, or true connections to a lost age, they reveal that Atlantis has not faded from the human spirit. It stirs still, calling from the depths of memory. Perhaps this resurgence is no accident. The priests who survived may have intended that their wisdom would return when humanity was ready, planting fragments in myths, in temples, in secret brotherhoods, waiting for the time when the world could wield it without destruction. If so, our age may be standing at the threshold of that return, unknowingly awakening the same powers that once shaped a sunken world. Whether humanity will walk the path of balance or repeat the mistakes of ambition remains uncertain. Yet the signs are clear. The forgotten science is no longer silent. It is re-emerging, not from the ocean, but from within ourselves, as if the soul of Atlantis still breathes, urging us to remember. Whispers linger that the priesthood of Atlantis never truly vanished. Though temples crumbled and the sea claimed their cities, some say their lineage endures, hidden in plain sight, guiding from shadows. They are described as watchers who move unseen through history, preserving fragments of the lost science, passing it quietly from teacher to student, from initiate to initiate, never allowing the flame to extinguish. Legends across cultures speak of mysterious figures who appear at turning points in time, offering knowledge, warning of danger, or inspiring sudden leaps of understanding. Sometimes they are cloaked as prophets, sometimes as sages, sometimes as wanderers who vanish as quickly as they arrive. Their presence raises the possibility that humanity has never truly walked alone, that guardians still keep watch, waiting for the right moment to act. Symbols carved into secret brotherhoods, rituals passed quietly through monastic orders, teachings preserved in fragments of myth, all may be threads of one hidden tapestry. Beneath the shifting surface of history lies a continuity too deliberate to be chance. Whether in the Essenes of Judea, the mystics of Egypt, the sages of India, or the hermits of Europe, echoes of Atlantean wisdom continue to whisper. Some say these guardians do not seek to rule but to remind. They wait for moments when humanity drifts too far into darkness, then plant a spark of memory enough to awaken a new path. Their purpose is not to lead openly but to prepare, to ensure that when the time comes, the knowledge of Atlantis will be ready to rise again. Others believe they still guard physical treasures, crystals sealed in caverns, scrolls hidden in temples, devices buried beneath the sea, waiting for a time when humanity can approach them with reverence rather than greed. These are not relics for conquest, but seeds of renewal, gifts entrusted to the future. If the guardians exist, their greatest secret may not be hidden temples or ancient artifacts, but the truth that the science of Atlantis was never separate from the human spirit. The eternal flame they protected still burns, not in stone halls, but within us. To awaken it is not to recover lost machines, but to remember the harmony of soul, earth, and cosmos that was once the foundation of their world. The story of the Atlantean priests is not simply one of loss. It is a reminder that knowledge must always walk hand in hand with wisdom, that power without humility destroys, but power with balance can heal and uplift. The guardians, if they still watch, remind us that the choice remains ours. Perhaps they are closer than we think, hidden in teachers, healers, visionaries, or even in the quiet moments of intuition that guide us toward light. If so, then the last guardians are not only in the shadows of history, but alive among us, preparing for the day when humanity is ready to reclaim what was once lost beneath the waves. The tale of Atlantis and its priesthood is more than a legend of a sunken world. It is a mirror held up to our own time, reminding us that the pursuit of knowledge must always be balanced with wisdom, that power is a test as much as a gift, and that echoes of ancient truths still call to us. Whether Atlantis was history or myth, its guardians remain part of the human story, urging us to remember, to listen, and to awaken. If this journey through forgotten worlds and hidden sciences has stirred your imagination, then help us keep the flame alive. Subscribe to the channel to join future explorations like this film, to let us know you value these stories. Share it with your friends and family so that the echoes of Atlantis may reach further, and leave a comment with your own thoughts and reflections. Your voice adds to this living dialogue, ensuring that the mysteries of the past continue to inspire the present.